This is our news, the weekend edition. And on the broadcast tonight, quarantined healthcare workers get tested for COVID-19. Lightning the cause of power outages here in the capital this morning. Plus, the finance minister says no plans to increase taxes. And later on, how COVID-19 could affect the staple event on the Bahamian calendar.
Our news is brought to you by Alive.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Andrew Knowles, and thanks so much for joining us. COVID-19 cases on Bimini are on the rise as 5 additional cases were confirmed on that island this afternoon. All of the new cases are females and are at home in isolation. Among the new cases are 2 minors, an 11-year-old and a 15-year-old. Up to now, there was only 1 minor. The ages of the other 3 women are 75, 37, and 47. The Ministry of Health is now reporting a total of 78 cases. The news comes as Health Minister Dr. Dwayne Sands confirmed earlier this week that expansive testing is underway on Bimini. New Providence has 62 confirmed cases. Bimini now has the second largest number of cases with 8, 1 more than Grand Bahama with 7. Cat Key has 1 confirmed case. To date, 15 people have recovered and 11 people have died. Just under 800 people are in quarantine. Well, dozens of quarantined healthcare workers taking coronavirus tests today. This comes after reported cases of COVID-19 at PMH and Sandilands Rehabilitation Center. Our Jared Higgs has the details.
With more than 150 doctors and nurses quarantined, the hope is that this round of COVID-19 testing will clear some to return to the front lines.
Some healthcare providers had minimal risk, so with 1 test, if they're negative, and obviously if they have no symptoms, then they'd be able to go back to work. For those who had a higher level of risk, we're likely to test them twice.
The root of the dilemma is a patient who tested positive for COVID-19 on PMH's medical surgical ward 2. A Sandilands patient who was on the ward at the time also tested positive after returning to the rehab facility's Robert Smith ward. In total, more than 200 healthcare workers were quarantined.
It is entirely possible that we'll see more positives that will come along with it. We're hoping, of course, that our healthcare providers are protected, but unfortunately we know in these types of situations, the more you test, the more likely it is that you're going to come up with at least some positive.
Some people would have seen the uncomfortable coronavirus tests where they get those nasal swabs. Well, that's exactly what's happening here today. They're being swabbed in their nose, in the back of their throat. They're also getting blood work done.
So we want to be able to correlate the antibody tests with the nasal swabs to see if we get positive results on both or negative results on both. But if they're discordant, and as in not the same, then we have to figure out whether we can rely on the antibody test or not to be able to help us with our diagnostic or screening capabilities.
Health Minister Dr. Dwayne Sands expressed confidence that the number of healthcare workers in quarantine would reduce dramatically when officials complete their risk assessment activity. Reporting for our news, I'm Jared Higgs.
Well, have you experienced a power outage today? Bahamas Power and Light says it's the result of this morning's lightning strikes on its overhead system. In a statement, the company said it was able to restore power to many areas. However, those residents of Nassau East South, Star Estates, McKinney Drive, and Carmichael Road remain without power this afternoon. In addition to those areas, the statement says there were also isolated outages in Sunset Park and surrounding areas, Carmichael Road from Blue Hill Road to Bel Air, including Golden Gates and Fire Trail East, portions of Pinewood Gardens, and Emmanuel Drive. Now, BPL assures teams are out working to quickly address these outages. Well, meantime, Bahamas Power and Light's revenue is in sharp decline amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. This as the power company's chairman says, since the decision to suspend disconnections, revenue collection is down by 30 to 35%.
We typically collect about $40 to $42 million in revenues. And we collected about slightly, maybe 30, 31. And so we were down about $11 million for the month of April. So that really affected us. And for the month of March, the month of April, we're pretty much trending the same way, where we're seeing potential shortfalls of around $12 million in revenues.
BPL's chairman, Dr. Donovan Moxey, says the revenue shortfall will significantly impact operations. And while being a state-run entity does provide a safety net, he is encouraging those who can afford to pay to continue to do so.
It's extremely important because the organization needs to continue to run. We still have very, very significant bills, particularly in our fuel cost and even our general operating cost. And so we're providing electricity. Obviously, we bill you in arrears, and so we bill you for the services you've already consumed. And so from our perspective, we would certainly like to get those bills paid.
With global oil prices at an all-time low, Moxey says the power company is stocking up on future supplies.
When we buy fuel, we typically have a 60-day supply. So the bill that you would see this week or this month, that reflects fuel that's about 60 days old that we had to purchase 60 days ago. So what we are doing now is we're purchasing fuel at the lower cost, and we do plan on fuel hedging as well.
Despite the addition of a newly commissioned multi-million-dollar plant, power outages continue. While the Wärtsilä plant solves the generation issue, transmission and distribution still present some challenges. With thousands now at home, the utility company's chairman is adamant BPL is more than prepared to handle rising demands as summer approaches. In fact, he anticipates they will have 80 to 100 megawatts over and above peak demand needs.
Yeah, there is a shift where you see the increased use of electricity by the residential customers, and obviously there's a decrease on the business side as well. But overall, what we've seen in the last 6 to 8 weeks is there's a consistent demand that we would normally expect this time of year. The only difference is it's shifted from most of that being on the business side to now being shifted to residential side.
Meantime, BPL employees got quite a scare on Tuesday after coming into contact with a customer who had been exposed to COVID-19. Out of an abundance of caution, BPL sent those employees home and immediately shut down operations that day.
So what we did was, recognizing that this was an individual who had come in person to do that, we immediately went to safety protocols, and we shut down our operations. We made sure everything was cleaned and sanitized so we can open up the next day. So that was just a precaution for us. So I'd like to tell the public, no one who had tested positive for COVID came into the office. No one who had tested positive for COVID interacted with any of our employees. It was someone who we know had been in proximity to an infected person.
Now, anyone who may have been infected with COVID, quarantined, or laid off because of the virus is eligible to apply for BPL's Deferred Benefit Program online. Moxey is strongly encouraging all residents to take advantage of the online process.
With BPL, we've always had online payments available, but a lot of consumers prefer to walk in and pay in person, whether it's the mall or some of the other services outlets that we've utilized. Well, obviously with COVID-19, that whole system has essentially been upended. So what we've done is we've really focused on really improving and updating our online bill payment process. And so what we encourage people to do is go to our website, sign up for online bill payment. We have our call center open now, normal business hours. I believe it's from 8 a.m. to about 7 p.m. in the evenings. And so you can call, get registered, get a PIN in order to activate your account. And then if you have a debit or a credit card, you can actually pay your BPL bill online.
The government has no plans to increase value-added tax or any other tax at this time as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. That's according to Finance Minister Peter Turnquest, who says it's simply not the time for that. Georgie O'Bain reports.
According to Turnquest, the government will try its best to manage with the resources currently at its disposal, which will require some bold steps and creativity.
There is no plan to go up on value-added tax or any other tax at this point. We certainly want to try and manage this as best we can within the resources that we have. Bear in mind that this crisis is going to cost some significant loss in revenue to the government as it is to individuals and to businesses. And we're going to have to figure out how we're going to address that for the long term.
While Turnquest noted that these are uncertain times, an increase in taxes would be the last resort. He added economic recovery will be slow.
Because the one thing that we cannot afford to happen is for us to amass significant debt that we saddle the future generations with. We want to be careful about that and be as responsible as we can with respect to that, but by the same token, understanding that this is a difficult period. And coming out of this is going to be very slow. Job creation, job retention is going to be slow. And so this is not the time to be talking about increasing taxes.
Noting that the pandemic will cause significant financial loss to the government and to the business community, Turnquest said it's now time to live within our means.
We're going to have to figure out some things and make some adjustments to ensure that we live within the means that the people have given to us. This is going to take a lot of creativity. It's going to take some bold steps in respect to our state-owned enterprises and how they operate to make them more efficient and less of a burden on the taxpayer. But as far as we are concerned at this point, we don't see any increases in taxes.
Reporting for our News Weekend edition, I'm Georgia Bing.
Hundreds of essential workers took advantage of today's opening at the Road Traffic Department. The department opened specifically to cater to all essential workers under the emergency orders. Acting Controller Bradley Sands says this morning's thunderstorm did present a bit of a challenge, but after clearing up, the process ran smoothly.
I must say we got off to a late start due to the severe thunderstorm that was in the area. And, one would have thought that the drivers that are already in the queue would have left, but those drivers waited patiently. And once the rain held up, the officers of the Road Traffic Department came out with the numbers to assist members of the essential services that needed their vehicles licensed, their driver's license renewed. And so the process has been going very smoothly, I must say, this morning.
Sands estimates some 500 people showed up for vehicle licensing and driver's license renewal for the morning alone. The Road Traffic Department implemented its new drive-through vehicle inspection and registration process, which, according to Sands, is working extremely well.
I must say that this process has surpassed what I imagined how well it flows. It takes away the fact that members of the public don't have to stand in the sun in long lines. They're able to sit in their cars if they have air conditioning and just go through the whole process without leaving their vehicles. It also keeps all the social protocols that the Ministry of Health and the Prime Minister have mentioned in his emergency proclamation that persons need to be distanced apart. We don't be concerned about that because you don't come out of your vehicle.
Well, still ahead tonight, allaying fears. The South Beach Member of Parliament addressing residents' concern over the community's clinic being used as a COVID-19 facility. Plus, uncertainty around COVID-19 may force the postponement of the Junkanoo parades. Residents of the South Beach constituency have voiced concerns following the South Beach Clinic being labeled a COVID-19 testing facility. The clinic can also provide care for 10 COVID-19 patients if the number of hospitalized patients continue to rise. South Beach Member of Parliament Jeffrey Lloyd responded to those concerns.
Yes, I did receive it, and we have given them the assurance that there's nothing to fear.
Lloyd confirmed that residents have been trying to contact him to vent their frustrations about the clinic being utilized for COVID-19 testing, but assured them that everything will be all right.
I did, in fact, receive a complaint let me just say it like this. I did receive a question from the residents there about what is likely to happen. And I've made it known to them that, listen, medical facilities are all across this country in various communities, and the government of the Bahamas is not going to make a decision that is in any way going to negatively impact on the health of our citizens.
Bahamians have already seen the cancellation of Bahamas Carnival and several regattas. But what could be the fate of the Boxing Day and New Year's Junkanoo parades? Well, Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture Lanisha Roll said those parades could likely be pushed to February.
I believe that the organizers of Junkanoo and the ministry, they're coming together to have the discussions, whether remotely or otherwise, to determine what if anything, can be salvaged in terms of Junkanoo, in particular for this year, or whether even perhaps we could look at pushing it back a little, perhaps to February or something is what I'm understanding that they're discussing. But there's nothing being decided as yet.
Junkanoo stakeholders will continue to meet with officials at the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture to determine what is the safest route to take, according to Roll, who said no final decision has been made just yet.
We want to continue to be optimistic. I believe that we all ought to maintain that optimism, that things at the end of the day will work out. You know, that's Junkanoo is very important for us. It's a very important part of our culture, part of our celebrations, part of the end of the year, and maybe that's really going to cause us to be a little more jovial at the end of the year. So hopefully things can come together, but at the end of the day, we want to be safe. So we're looking and we're being guided by the safety personnel to ensure that we are all safe and able to have it. And if not, we're going to just simply have to continue to make the adjustments with people and their health being the priority.
When our news, the weekend edition returns. Mega Resort Bahamar doing its part in the COVID-19 fight. So stay with us. Welcome back to our news, the weekend edition. Bahamar doing its part in the fight against COVID-19. The resort's president, Graham Davis, says Bahamar moved quickly once government began taking action, and that he believes once the Ministry of Health gives the all clear, the resort will be ready to welcome employees back to work and reopen.
If we can get out of this situation of the pandemic here in the Bahamas sooner than the rest of destinations around the world that are right now still seeing a surge, we'll be that much readier to open and be ready to welcome guests back. And we can give those assurances when the Ministry of Health and when the government tells us that we're in the right condition to consider opening up businesses here in the Bahamas. And we'll be ready.
According to the resort's president, Bahamar has lost hundreds of millions as the pandemic struck during its peak season. However, Davis says the resort has been going over its protocols for sanitation, safety, and health, which is their primary concern. He said once borders are opened and airlines resume flights to the Bahamas, the resort will be ready.
We're staying very focused on our associates first, and certainly our guests, and making sure that we're staying engaged with our guests throughout this time, and letting them know that we're thinking of them, and they should take a moment of respite while they're quarantined and feeling anxious, and look at some beautiful sceneries of the Bahamas and look forward to that future trip to come back.
A local businessman talks about the impact of COVID-19 on his business and the sport. So stay with us. Welcome back. A local businessman and avid bowler talks about the impact of social distancing on both his business and his sport. Marcellus Hall reports.
So here's the thing. Local bowlers, local softball players, all of them have found themselves unable to take part in their sports. Caught up with one of them today, Clayton Gardner, who is a local businessman and a bowling enthusiast, had this conversation with him.
It's been, a month now? I'm stopped counting the days and the weeks now, but we're finding it very tough. As a matter of fact, so tough, Marcella, if you stop by my house now, I've simulated a golf course in my yard, just trying to stay busy, just trying to do something, maybe I'll send you a shot of it, after this interview, but just trying to stay busy. I mean, you can simulate all you want. If it's not the real thing, it's not the real thing. So it's been kind of tough, very tough. And the whole thing about it, Marcellus, is you don't know when things are gonna open back up. And I was just talking with somebody today, how that's gonna happen if and when, because you go into the bowling alley. Obviously I have my own ball, but, other persons there, like recreational bowlers, they're coming in, they're using the bowling alley's balls. How will that work? I mean, do they sanitize the balls? Do they sanitize the area that you're bowling? So it's going to be tough if and when,
Yeah, you're right. I mean, absolutely. This changes the entire dynamic of the way we used to do things. For a long time to come, I would imagine, we now have to approach things so much differently. How do you figure, like you said, this will certainly impact bowling and other sports that require communal things, the way, like you say, you share bowling balls on occasion for those recreational bowlers. But how do you think this affects team sports as well? Because, imagine, you're on a bowling team, you got to interact with your teammates. There's so much of that going on. How do you feel that will change in terms of drastically when things do resume?
In one word, awkward. Because as well as I do, in bowling, it's a team sport. It's a sport where you're giving high fives and you're encouraging your fellow teammates, and you're sitting in a quote unquote enclosed area. So I don't see how, like I said, it'll be difficult if you even try to get team bowling back again.
And our thanks again to Clayton for taking a moment out of his busy schedule to have a moment. Meanwhile, I'm Marcellus Hall for our news. The weather is next.
And that's our news for this Saturday. I'm Andrew Knowles. For all of us here at Our News, thank you for watching. Let's remember to be safe and look out for each other. Have a good night.